I have to assume that the U.S. Congress would really, I think this might be the last straw for the U.S. Congress.
Earlier on today, President Zelensky used his Davos speech to deliver a sobering warning to NATO and to Europe.
No one has really seen the alliance in action. If Putin decides to take Lithuania or strike Poland, who will respond? Who will respond? Right now, NATO exists thanks to believe that the United States will act, that it will not stand aside and will help. But what if it doesn't?
Well, Zelensky bluntly said that Europe likes to talk and not act. He added a new world order could only come from action. Earlier this morning, the German Chancellor, Friedrich Merz, had a similar warning about the reshaping of the world stage.
We have entered a time of great power politics. The international order of the past 3 decades, anchored in international law, has always been imperfect. Today, its very foundations have been shaken. This new world of great powers is being built on power, on strength, and when it comes to it, on force.
Chancellor Merz of Germany, President Trump, of course, earlier was hosting that signing ceremony for his new Board of Peace.
We can do numerous other things. Once this board is completely formed, we can do pretty much whatever we want to do, and we'll do it in conjunction with the United Nations. You know, I've always said the United Nations has got tremendous potential, has not used it.
So that was Donald Trump. So let's start then with Karin Von Hippel, the former senior State Department official in Washington, who has also led the Royal United Services Institute. Welcome to the programme, Karin.
Thank you, John. Nice to be back.
It's always good to have you here. Can we start with Ukraine and the meeting between Presidents Zelensky and Trump? I'm going to start with that. That is about war. It's about life and death in the real world today. What are your thoughts about what you heard from Volodymyr Zelensky and progress towards a deal, or maybe I should say lack of progress?
Well, certainly concern about what America would do, not just in Ukraine, but in other countries. It's so hard to know what's going on behind the scenes right now, and everything's so fast paced that, I'm assuming that many of the other world leaders, including the Secretary General of NATO, are trying to work their magic on Donald Trump while he is in Davos, really to see what more they can do to support Ukraine. But the real unknown in all of this is Russia going to agree to any of this? And it's not clear to me that they are.
Yes, I mean, listening to Zelensky, Karin, he didn't directly criticise or attack Donald Trump at any stage, but the subtext of pretty much everything he said was a warning about trusting President Trump.
Right. I mean, look, I have been worried about the U.S. commitment to NATO ever since Donald Trump was elected the first time. He went through the motions the last time around his first term. This term, he's only informally committed to Article 5. He's been very critical, as we heard even yesterday at Davos, of NATO. Lots of misinformation about what America spends and what Europe spends. He's made more of a public commitment to Qatar security. There was a U.S.-Qatar security alliance that was announced, and he sat there and he signed it with a pen and showed it to everybody. And he hasn't given that same sort of commitment to NATO. Now, I have to assume that the U.S. Congress would really, I think this might be the last straw for the U.S. Congress if Donald Trump says, no, we're not going to the aid of another country if another part of a NATO country is attacked. I have to assume that might be too much for even his Republican friends in Congress, but I don't know. We just don't know. No,
I mean, uncertainty is the thing. And what do you make of the Board of Peace that was formally set up today? I was mentioning earlier on, I think, children in school are going to be learning about that in 100 years' time. As for what they learn about it, as for what they read, that's another question. What for you is the real significance of the Board of Peace? We're talking about it, playing to Trump's vision of a world ordered by strongman leaders. We're talking about his vanity. What are we talking about?
Well, you could take the positive spin that you do need all the voices and stakeholders at the table. You need to keep pressure on the Israelis to follow through on their commitments. You need to keep pressure on Hamas. And so having these various countries on the board that do have influence over these various parties is important. And it could end up being a good thing. It could end up bringing the money to the table, et cetera. It's, the problem with many of the things that Donald Trump does is we just don't really know what the plan is. He doesn't spell it out to any of us. I think he likes to keep it in his head. Even like yesterday, he didn't, he probably planned on saying we're not going to use force in Greenland, but he didn't want to let any anybody know what he was thinking. It's the reality TV show man in him that likes to keep everybody on suspense. And diplomacy shouldn't be working that way.
Yes.
We need more predictability than we're having. So
Yes.
let's, I mean, that's the positive side, but who knows? It's just so hard for any of us to know.
Yeah, I'm all in favour of optimism, but the president was asked, is this about just replacing the United Nations? And he said it might be. And then you look at who was on that platform, those who signed up to the Board of Peace so far. It is a lineup of autocrats and authoritarians. You've got, well, I don't think Putin has actually said yet that he wants to be a part of this. He has talked about using some of his frozen assets to pay for membership, which is also a kind of trolling. It's not really encouraging.
Yeah, I mean, Lukashenko from Belarus, I think, was also invited to join. The UN has not also been living up to its ambition for many years now. It's been really a challenging venue for all sorts of reasons. It's nothing to do with the UN. It's the member states that are to blame. But I remember when I worked on Syria in the U.S. State Department, we couldn't even get a humanitarian resolution through the United Nations Security Council because of China and Russia blocking things.
Yes.
So I'm not entirely sure that replacing the UN or not replacing the UN, we need an international system that works. And I'm not entirely sure right now what the answer is, because Donald Trump himself doesn't really believe in alliances and partnerships. And so I have a feeling we're just going to be going through these sort of ad hoc type situations for the next few years while he's still president. And then at the end, we're going to have to see where we are and what we can make of it. I mean, I already think that the world was becoming more ad hoc anyway, because it's become much more multipolar because of the rise of China, et cetera. So we're just going to have to live with this uncertainty and gray for the years to come. And we have to figure out how to manage it in the best possible way.
Yeah, it's not encouraging, though, that when the facts of France declining to join the Board of Peace was first mentioned to Donald Trump, his first reaction was, well, maybe I'll hit them with tariffs, 200%
Yeah, no more
tariffs.
Champagne for my friends, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's not an encouraging reaction.
No, certainly not. It's not a way to treat allies. I think that in the last few days, we've seen a coordinated response from the Canadians, from the French, from Ursula von der Leyen at the EU, from Keir Starmer. And I think they are now trying to really speak with a unified voice and say enough is enough. And we're going to push back when it is appropriate.
Okay.
And it's good for him to hear that, because, he is, as we've discussed before, John, he is a bully and he responds better when you push back. I mean, look what happened with China when they said no more rare earths for you, right?
Okay, it's really great to get your thoughts as always, Karin. Look forward to doing it again very soon.